The church hall was filled with warm light that Sunday morning. Families sat in rows, children fidgeting, hymns echoing softly in the background. I was sitting quietly in the third pew, my hands folded, my heart steady. Then it happened. My father stood up to speak, confident as always, his voice carrying over the congregation. But instead of words of encouragement, he dropped his dagger. "My daughter," he said with a dismissive chuckle, "has no job. Imagine that. All these degrees and still sitting at home, doing nothing. Sometimes I wonder how a person can waste their life so easily." Laughter rippled in pockets of the hall. Some looked at me with pity, others with concealed amusement. My face burned, but I didn't move. Inside, I wanted to scream. I wanted to shout the truth. But I didn't. Instead, I sat still, because the weight of what they didn't know was heavier than their laughter. They thought I was jobless. They thought I was nothing. But under that very roof, I had already given more than they could ever imagine. Fade out with heavy silence. Later that evening, I sat alone in my quiet apartment, the sound of the city muffled by thick glass windows. On the table before me lay the signed documents, the ones that confirmed the largest donation in the church's history, the new roof fund. I smiled bitterly. How ironic. While my father mocked me in front of everyone, the truth was that his beloved church would not even have a roof over their heads if not for me. But no one knew. That was the beauty of it. My name wasn't on the list. I had given anonymously. I didn't crave applause or recognition or anyone's validation, because my success was mine, built in silence, with every sleepless night, every sacrifice, every rejection I had swallowed. By day, the world saw me as a daughter who had failed. But behind the curtains, I ran an online design firm, remote teams across continents, international clients, contracts bigger than anyone could guess. They thought I was jobless. But in truth, I had built an empire in silence. And that empire had quietly paid for the very roof that would soon cover the heads of those who laughed at me. My mornings no longer began with alarms or commutes. They began with choices. A steaming mug of coffee, a wall of screens glowing with messages from New York, Dubai, and London. The business was thriving. My designs, digital architecture, branding concepts, virtual structures, were in demand across the globe. What had begun as a side project in my dorm room had grown into a company with dozens of employees. They depended on me, and I never let them down. I had invested smartly. Real estate, stocks, projects no one in my family even knew about. While they thought I was wasting my life, I was securing generational wealth. But I stayed quiet, because real power doesn't shout. It whispers. And as I signed another contract worth more than my father's annual salary, I realized I didn't need to prove anything. The world outside thought I was unemployed. But here, in my quiet world of glowing screens and silent victories, I knew the truth. Success is sweetest when no one expects it from you. Whispers began. Aunties at the church wondered how I drove a newer car when I had no job. A neighbor mentioned spotting me on a call speaking fluent English with someone from abroad. Maybe she's hiding something. Or maybe she's living off someone else? The rumors were both sharp and shallow. They couldn't comprehend that I had carved my own path. But their curiosity grew when the church treasurer announced the anonymous donor who had saved the roof project. A six-figure amount. Nobody in that small community had ever given such a sum. Eyes turned toward the obvious names: wealthy businessmen, families with reputations. My name was never on the list, and I preferred it that way. Let them wonder. Let them whisper. The truth was my quiet armor. The first to approach me was my cousin Miriam, sweet-faced with eyes too curious to be innocent. We sat across each other at a cafe, She stirred her tea endlessly before finally speaking. So, people are saying strange things about you, she began, her tone light but her eyes sharp. They say you might be, you know, doing something online. Maybe earning? I raised an eyebrow. And if I was? She leaned closer, whispering as though my success would offend the air around us. Then why hide it? Why let Uncle humiliate you? Why not show people? I smiled faintly, sipping my coffee. Because real success doesn't need an audience. Her smile froze. That wasn't the answer she wanted. She wanted details, confirmation, gossip to carry back. But I gave her nothing. As she left, I saw the frustration in her eyes. She had failed to extract the truth. And yet I knew. Her questions were only the beginning. If Miriam suspected soon, the whole family would come knocking. It didn't take long. It didn't take long. My father, flanked by 2 church elders, showed up at my door one evening. His voice carried the same arrogance it had in the church. "We've heard some rumors," he said, not bothering with greetings. "That you've been hiding money, that you're living some kind of secret life." I stood tall. And if I was? The elder on the left cleared his throat. "The church is in need. You should think of your family's honor. If you truly have means, it is your duty to step up openly." My father's tone turned venomous. "Don't play games. You've embarrassed me enough. If you have something, you owe it to this family to share." I met his gaze, steady. "And if I don't?" He slammed his hand against the table. "Then you are nothing more than the failure I told everyone you are." Silence stretched. Then I stepped aside, opening the door. "In that case, I suppose you should leave." The shock on their faces was almost worth the years of silence. I didn't slam the door. I closed it softly, because dignity is louder than rage. After that night, the storm began. Calls, texts, voicemails, relatives begging, accusing, guilt-tripping. My father spreading new rumors that I had money but refused to share, that I was selfish, that I had turned against the family. The gossip thickened like smoke. I ignored it all. Instead, I poured myself deeper into work, into the empire I had built. While they clawed at my silence, I rose higher. They thought they could pressure me into bending. But every unanswered call was my quiet rebellion. Every ignored insult was my strength. And as the pressure grew unbearable for them, I remained unshaken. Because silence is its own kind of thunder. The breaking point came during the church's annual fundraiser. The hall was decorated, lights strung across beams, the half-repaired roof still a reminder of the anonymous donation. My father took the stage again, chest puffed with pride. And then, with venom masked as humor, he said, "Of course, some people here prefer to hide in the shadows. My own daughter, for example. Useless, jobless, while others carry the weight of the church." The crowd stirred. And then, the treasurer stepped forward, nervous, holding a folder. "Sir, with respect, I think the truth should be known." He opened the folder and read aloud the details. The date, the amount, the donor. And though I had given anonymously, the documents, by a slip or by fate, revealed my name. A hush fell over the hall. All eyes turned to me. My father's face drained of color. I stood slowly, my voice calm. "You called me jobless beneath this roof. But while you mocked me, I was the one who built it above you." The silence that followed was deafening. I didn't need to scream. I didn't need to argue. The proof was there, in black and white. The community that had once laughed at me now turned their eyes with respect, some even with shame. I simply walked out, calm, unbothered. My silent exit was louder than any confrontation. From that day forward, the gossip ended. My father, once so loud, grew strangely quiet in church. He avoided my gaze, avoided the whispers of others. That was my revenge. Not anger, not destruction, but silence. Because the moment truth revealed itself, all their weapons crumbled. Weeks later, I returned to the church. The new roof stood tall, sunlight streaming through stained glass, casting colors across the hall. I sat quietly in the back pew, watching children laugh under the shelter I had given. My father glanced at me once from across the room, his face unreadable. I didn't need his apology anymore. I didn't need his pride, because I had built something greater than his approval. I closed my eyes, breathing in the peace of it all. He called me jobless beneath the roof, never knowing I was the one who built it above him.